Hey everyone, this is Rob with Thaco Thoughts with Rob. This is episode 8, and today we are talking about kits. So I want to also talk about a couple of my favorite kits over the years. I also want to discuss the bad reputation sometimes kits have. You can see the vast differences in the power level of kits depending on what book you're reading. For instance, comparing the Straight Fighter's Handbook kits to, for example, the Book of Elves kits, which are huge gulfs in power levels. And finally, I want to talk about how to approach kits as simply sources of inspiration and how to modify those kits to your own taste as both a player and as a dungeon master. So first off, let's go over a couple of my favorite kits over the years. The first kit I want to talk about is the Swashbuckler kit from the Fighter's Handbook. And this one has like a special place in my heart because one of my favorite characters from my youth was my swashbuckling character, Cyrano Jones. If you remember from maybe the last episode about character death, I talk about his death in the Great Glacier falling into a trap. But anyway, as far as Cyrano Jones is concerned and his swashbuckling kit, let's read some of the benefits he has, or he had. So the first thing we're going to want to look at when it comes to the kits is simply the description of the kits and the flavor of the kits and how players should approach play of those kits. And this is funny because this is very important because the whole reason you're getting a kit in the first place is to distinguish your fighter from all other fighters. So with the Swashbuckler, open description, a Swashbuckler is a sophisticated, witty, highly armed and armored hero in a sophisticated city-based campaign. Like the Three Musketeers, he's fully capable of putting on heavy armor, picking up a bastard sword and soldiering along other tank warriors, but he shines in comparison when the heroes are adventuring in the city in light armor and with light weapons. So that right there gives you a solid direction and role-playing. You're not going to play a swashbuckler like a typical fighter. You're going to go for a sophisticated approach to the swashbuckler, a witty approach to the swashbuckler. The second thing we're going to look at is, if you happen to use secondary skills, it tells you about those. So, like for instance, if you have a ship-based campaign where you're on a lot of ship, a good choice would be the navigator, gambler, jeweler, scribe, or weaponsmith. Sounds good to me. And then now here is where the swashbuckler gets some actual solid benefits, especially if you're using the weapon proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies optional rules. So the Swashbuckler receives 2 extra weapon proficiency slots, which must be devoted to weapon proficiencies with one of the following weapons: stiletto, manganch, rapier, and saber. So you get 2 bonus proficiencies right there. You'll have to use those for swashbuckler flavored weapons, of course. And then, of course, if you use the non-weapon proficiency rules, you get some bonus proficiencies. You get, in the general category, etiquette, and the rogue category, tumbling. Now, what's really cool about the swashbuckler, if you use the proficiency rules, or non-weapon proficiency rules, is that the swashbuckler can buy rogue skills as if he were a rogue. So if anybody else was buying rogue skills, they would have to pay double the amount of proficiency slots, but swashbucklers do not. So, as you can see, the Swashbuckler, in my opinion, is a pretty cool kit. It gives you a solid direction in role playing, and it gives you just enough of an edge to have your character stand apart from others in your group. So, if you have, 2 or 3 fighters in your group and you're the only swashbuckler, well, you're going to have a very distinct flavor separate from the others. And a side note, there is another version of the swashbuckler where we're not going to go over that here, that's in the Thieves Handbook, which is more of a, as I recall, more an acrobatic swashbuckler. Okay, so the second kit I want to talk about is the Forest Runner from the Ranger's Handbook. So the character that I had with the Forest Runner kit was named Jean-Luc many, many years ago. And on the side note, he actually died in an interesting way as well. He was actually snatched up by a Periton. And he ended up killing the Periton while they were like way up in the air, and they both ended up crashing into the side of the mountain and both dying like that. So that's a good, one of the reasons I remember Jean-Luc so well. But the Forest Runner, I picked a Forest Runner because of obviously the association with Robin Hood. I loved the idea of playing a Robin Hood type character, and I played it up to the hilt. So with the Forest Runner, they give you another solid direction. It's like, whenever a corrupt and oppressive regime holds power, there's bound to be a Forest Ranger. Forest Runner, I apologize. Forest Runners rise in opposition to such regimes, living on the fringes of society, usually one step ahead of the law. They're criminals only in the technical sense, and as they adhere to a personal code that compels them to wage war against greedy aristocrats and unjust rulers. So that right there gives you another solid direction on how to play that particular character. So even if you didn't use any of the so-called game benefits, these kits show you how to approach different concepts in your own mind and how to basically portray them during the game. So even if you didn't have any benefits, you could still play these kits, if only as a source of role-playing inspiration. But let's look at the mechanical benefits of playing a Forest Runner. First off, the requirements for playing a Forest Runner is that you have to have a charisma score of at least 12. So this emphasizes the heavy role-playing nature of a Forest Runner. A couple of the Forest Runner abilities is inspiring NPCs, leading people, things of that nature. Just like when you see in Robin Hood and his Merry Men, Robin Hood's ability to inspire a revolution. So on a, going to the secondary abilities, Warrior, Fletcher, Forester, Farmer, Hunter, Leather Worker, Teamster, Weaponsmith. Those are like if you're using the secondary skill options. By the way, on secondary skills, I always like to use secondary skills as a kind of a background. Like secondary skills are what you kind of grew up around, right? That's kind of what I always kind of approach them. So you can both use the secondary skills and the non-weapon proficiencies. Just kind of, like I said, just try to treat the secondary skills as more of, hey, you know what? I grew up being, living as a fisherman, but then I walked away from it, but you still have that kind of background. Anyway, I digress. So the Forest Runner receives bonus weapon proficiency slot above and beyond those he's normally allowed. The bonus slot must be filled with one of the following weapons: longbow, quarterstaff, longsword, or dagger. He must then fill 3 of his first 6 slots with the remaining weapons in the list, Once he's met this requirement, he may fill subsequent slots with any weapons he chooses of his choice. So right there, he gets some bonus weapon proficiencies, which is always a good thing. Now, the non-weapon proficiencies, it says required Boyer Fletcher. What I would say is not say required, because that kind of cheats the player when you're like, make it a bonus non-weapon proficiency, so they automatically get Boyer Fletcher. They don't have to spend a slot for that. Also, recommended non-weapon proficiencies would be like alertness, blacksmithing, camouflage, disguise, endurance, leatherworking, persuasion, riding land-based, rope use, and weaponsmithing. So the rest of that is just basically what you need to fulfill your role as a forest runner. Now, the forest runner species enemy. The species enemy should have some associated with the corrupt regime he opposes. It may be the king's pet, such as a wolf or tiger, an evil race with which the monarchy has allied itself with, goblins or ogres, or a symbol of the government, a snake or hydra, or a creature that opposed officials have used in war. So the species enemy of a forest runner needs to be in some way, shape, form, or fashion associated with the evil regime in which they are fighting. On to the more the special benefits of the forest runner. So the forest runner will have a +5 chance to hide in natural surroundings and a +5 chance to move silently. So this is emphasizing natural surroundings, the forests, things of that nature. If they're in the city, they probably will not receive those benefits. And here comes the role-playing aspect of the forest runner. So once per day, prior to making an attack, a forest runner may spend 2 to 5 rounds boosting the morale of his companions with flattering words and expressions of confidence. He can influence a number of companions equal to his level. If the forest runner makes a successful charisma check afterwards, the companions enjoy a +2 bonus to their morale for the next 3 to 12 rounds. Each companion also receives a +1 bonus to his first attack roll. The inspiring speech doesn't affect animals, other forest runners, or himself. The forest runner can't attempt to inspire his companions in the midst of battle or while they are occupied in other activities. So, yeah, this is a very bard-like ability to influence people on that level, to give them a boost in confidence. The forest runner can also take the disguise proficiency for 1 proficiency slot. So as I recall, this is probably a rogue proficiency, and he can take it for only 1 proficiency slot. And then reaction bonus. In his homeland or any region where his reputation precedes him, a forest runner can count on food and shelter at no charge for himself and his companions from supportive commoners. A forest runner also receives a +1 reaction modifier from peasants of good or neutral alignment of all cultures. Okay, so let's go on to a major problem that I do have with kits, but this, of course, can be easily fixed. So the problem with kits is that depending on what book you read is how effective on a mechanical level those kits will be. For example, the Fighter's Handbook are pretty tame compared to what you find, and once more I'll bring it up, the Elves Handbook. Now, one of the bigger offenders for me in the Fighter's Handbook is the Barbarian Kit. Now, there is a Barbarian's Handbook, but let's assume that you don't have the Barbarian's Handbook and you're going strictly by the Fighter's Handbook. The problem I have with is, now, if you're used to the first edition Barbarian, you are going to be very disappointed in this kit. Now, the Barbarian Kit does give a lot of great role-playing advice for the Barbarian, But if you're looking for like mechanical advantages, the mechanical advantages are pretty lackluster, because it's all about basically social interactions, your strength being kind of a source of either having NPCs really impressed with you or really hating you. For instance, the special benefits. Barbarians are impressive because of sheer strength, intensity, and animal magnetism. This gives them a +3 reaction adjustment bonus in certain situations. And that is it. And then that same concept, their strength and intensity, can also work against them, depending on what you roll on a reaction table. Let's look at a way to fix the Barbarian, to make them more in line with what you might see in the first edition Barbarian. So the first thing we're going to look at is, for example, and this goes back to required versus bonus. So in weapon proficiencies, it says required battle axe, bastard sword. What I would say is, don't say required, say bonus, either battle axe or bastard sword. That could alleviate some of the lacklusterness of the Barbarian, is giving them bonus weapon proficiencies. And going to these special benefits, what was the thing that the Barbarian in the first edition was? He was very much against magic, right? Now, there's already a Berserker kit in the Fighter's Handbook. So, not every Barbarian is necessarily a Berserker. But at the same time, you're used to the idea of Barbarians having some sort of real combat advantage. So I might say, if I wanted to spice up the Barbarian, I could emphasize their superstition. For example, I might give them a +1 or +2 versus magical foes and magical beasts. That could be something to emphasize their barbarian nature. And you can go on and on. I mean, you could say that barbarians have various bonuses versus like magic users, or various bonuses against more sophisticated characters, like very city-based, because think about it, history basically has barbarians versus civilization, the Roman Empire versus the Germanic tribes. So in some ways, city-based characters could be or civilization-based characters could be almost like a species enemy to a barbarian. Now, what's really a good thing that the barbarian gets, they get an actual bonus proficiency, endurance, and so that's free to have. They also give recommended non-weapon proficiencies like animal handling, animal training, direction sense, fire building, riding land-based, weather sense, blind fighting, hunting, mountaineering, and running, set snare, survival. They give a whole bunch. So if you want to, you can give some of those as bonus proficiencies versus recommended, depending on what kind of tribe they come from. For instance, if they come from a horse riding society, you can just say, you know what, you get riding land-based for absolute free. Who cares, right? But that adds to the flavor of the barbarian, and it makes the barbarian kit more worthwhile to play. So as you can see, kits can be very inspirational and important to the role-playing aspect of your game. The only thing that you need to be willing to do is modify the hell out of those kits. Remember, it's all optional. There's a lot of people that won't let you have a kit at all. So be willing to modify those kits, and that includes taking away stuff. If you think that a kit has some sort of ability that is just out of sync with your game, take it out. Just like everything else. Because, too many people are dismissive of the handbooks in generals and kits specifically because they're not willing to go beyond what is, told them in those books. The books are just tools. The kits are just inspiration. Use them as you will. So on that note, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode. But as usual, you can find this and others like it on Spotify, on YouTube, and as usual, this video is brought to you by the Evil Dungeon Master. And with that, I bid you adieu.